Hello everybody, it's Warren here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are in for a bit of a chariot double cast, with this first match being Beastmen against High Elves, and I've just been having so much fun lately with chariots. Previously I was kind of addicted to heavy cav, so that was what I've been playing for a long time now. I'm sure you guys are probably sick and tired of seeing me run heavy cav after heavy cav match. But lately I've been trying out those heroic chariots after doing that video on them, and after testing them out a whole bunch and then putting it into practice. I've been having a huge amount of fun with them. So diving right in, we are here in this first match. It is Beastmen against High Elves, and so I decided to go a little conventional. I didn't go anything crazy. I brought Morgur because I wanted that tanky lord. I didn't want to get sniped out by dragon play. If I bring Kazrak on a chariot, I didn't want to get sort of suffer a premature fatality there. So I brought Morgur because he's very tanky. He's not going to get shot down by projectiles. He's not going to get really sniped by dragons or a Lariel on an eagle or any shenanigans like that. You do get the 2 free summons of Chaos Spawn. You've got Call of Violence as well as Foe Seeker. Alongside him, though, we do have 2 casters, each on a chariot, each going in with a few spells. One of them, Brave Shaman of Shadows, who is coming in with Smoke and Mirrors, Melkoth's Miasma, Enfeebling Foe, and Jagged Dagger. The other one, Jagged Dagger, Spirit Leech, to destroy enemy heavy cav, of course, and then Life Leeching. So one of the cool things about Spirit Leech is that it's actually pretty nifty against heavy cav, such as Dragon Princes. I apologize there, but it's actually pretty nifty there for things such as Dragon Princes, because it kills multiple models. So you'll kill like 7 or 8 models with every cast. And of course, they're not getting healed. They're not coming back with Lariel. Front line here, quite a bit of Gors, nothing too fancy. 2 Gorehorde with shields, 2 Ungor spears on either flank, some with shields, some without. As you can see out here, we're doing without, so actually 3 Ungor spears, I suppose. More sort of kill-oriented line here. We do have Ungor Raiders, just to try to zone away Elite Reavers. Unfortunately, don't really have the greatest of tools. The Beastmen don't really have tools to zone off Elite Reavers. They have to overcommit to cavalry, but even then, the High Elf cavalry is pretty strong against them. Minotaurs with shields are back here, and then on the other flank we do have Butchers of Kalkan Guard, so quite a hefty anti-large contingent, especially when combined with the Korok's Man Rippers, so pretty potent stuff. Relying essentially on the chase to win me the infantry fight, and then investing much more heavily on the anti-large front here. Finally, we do have the Sons of Goros as well as Chaos Warhounds with Poison to provide a bit of zoning and high-speed chase and pursuit and all that sort of stuff. Now for my opponent, he is doing a bit of a hybrid build. Definitely some kiting annoyance here, 2 Elite Reaver archers, a noble mounted on a horse, a Moondragon, as well as a Lariel who's coming in with Earthblood, Arcane Unforging. She actually doesn't have many of her items. If you look here, we can see there's no, as far as I can tell, she's on the Eagle, she's got Arcane Unforging, she's got Banishment, she's got Frost Protection, but she doesn't have the Shield Stone, so we're not going to be seeing any physical resist plays. And it does look like she's a bit stripped down, and I actually don't even see the Star of Averlorn. It's definitely going pretty cheap here as far as Lariel is concerned. Not necessarily what I'd recommend. I think you should try to bring the healing in as if you're taking Lariel. Over here, my opponent does have some Spearmen. He does have the Signs of Mathlon, as well as then 2 units of Swordmasters of Hoth, backed by 2 units of Lothan Seaguard. So a decent selection of shooting. He's got some good solutions to heavy infantry if I want Bestigor heavy, and of course Spearmen will do rather well against most Beastmen large units because they're very squishy. They don't have much armor. But here I'm going to push out. I didn't really feel like camping, didn't really feel like wasting my life waiting for my opponent to try to chip away at me in the woods. And I figured with a small force like this, it's obvious that he isn't going full on kiting build, and that somewhere out here he's got some troops that we can pick at. So you can see a volley come in here into the Sons of Gors. Definitely very annoying. There's not much we can do to protect ourselves against these Elite Reavers. Just try to zone them out with our Ungor spears. And I do actually shift the Butchers, as well as I'm trying to get Morgur over here, so that they are zoning them out, because the Butchers with their regen as well, and Silver Shields, as well as Morgur with his regen, can soak this fire up much better. And of course Morgur actually has a 75% missile resist, so if you can trick your opponent into attacking Morgur, perfect situation. My opponent here makes a bit of a greedy play. He drops his Moondragon down on Morgur, and of course the Moondragon does pretty well against Morgur. It's got fire damage, it's got 46 attack whip, and Morgur does land a meaty hit there, but you know, the Moondragon's going to be doing some hurt. But rather than giving in here, we're going to swing around. The Butchers of Kalkan Guard are coming in, and the dragons are slower on the ground than they are up in the up in the air. The nominal speed here isn't that high, and the dragon here is currently being poisoned, which is really nifty for me. I hit it with the Melkoth's Miasma seconds before he can take off into the air. The Butchers are going to get a connection. They're just beating the snot out of this guy, and he's really not able to take off. He's having a horrible time of it. He's actually going to stand and fight now. You can see in come the Chaos Warhounds, in comes the Sons of Goros, and now a huge misplay on my part. I saw the banishment coming in rather than vacating the premise. I stick around, intent on killing this Moondragon, and now we're going to pay the price. So shortly you're going to see a nasty banishment go down. You can see just annihilates the Sons of Goros. It actually travels incredibly conveniently. This is one of those things that sucks sometimes because of how unpredictable vortexes are. Go figure, it could have went anywhere else and would have done much less damage, but it goes to the one place where it can do a lot of damage. So Regardless, I essentially just lost about 2,000 gold worth of troops, but my opponent has lost his Moon Dragon. We hit it with an enfeebling foe, and it does actually get taken out. It explodes there into Chaos Spawn, which is a little unfortunate because that, once again, that wasn't something I wanted. So, honestly, my opponent, while definitely not winning that engagement, also didn't necessarily have the worst situation there. I did lose, essentially, 2 rather valuable units, almost 2,000 gold worth of troops, and Morgar's staff, which is another couple hundred, was wasted as well. And my opponent didn't invest too heavily into that, so you know, we both invested about the same amount of Winds of Magic. So while definitely not fun for him, he didn't lose breath attacks and all that sort of stuff. It was definitely not bad for me. L'Ariel does immediately extricate herself after trying to poke away a little bit at these Bray Shaman, and the Ungor, or the Illyrian Reavers here, are going to fall back. My opponent here is going to commit his Noble into the fight. Now, unfortunately, my Ungor Raiders refused to extricate themselves, and I was pinging them or ordering them to retreat constantly, but they just would not listen. I don't know why, what was up with them, but they just didn't feel like listening today. But it doesn't really matter. The Ungors will eventually kind of listen a little bit. You can see they're retreating, but I do believe they're going to get snared and come back in. It was pretty crazy and pretty annoying. But the Noble here definitely taking a beating, definitely not able to escape. Once again, with that relatively high speed on our Minotaurs, with the and with just the raw amount of damage we're putting out, he's really not having a good time of it. But my opponent is once again going to get a second banishment, and that's going to do a lot of hurt. You can see we do hit the Noble here with an Overcast and Enfeebling Foe, but in comes the banishment, and of course it travels the perfect direction and wipes out a bunch of our Ungor Raiders. So my opponent is essentially getting some really good luck here with his RNG, wiping out my Korrax Man Rippers and my Ungor Raiders to very, very badly here. But we are still going to be able to take this Noble down. Definitely big misplay there on my part, just blobbing so much. Definitely a bit annoying with the Ungors not disengaging, but what can you do? The Noble does try to escape here, but we are not going to let him. We hit him with a Melgoth's Miasma to make sure he cannot get out. He's still hit by an Enfeebling Foe, and he is just getting beaten down. He's getting taken to Pound Town, and this ugly elf here is going to get taken down here by the Minotaurs. You can see he just gets shot to death. These guys are really not to be messed around with. Elsewhere, the line is kind of a mess. I did throw my Chaos Spawn away because I knew they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't survive for long. I just want to get them to do some damage, if no damage, and they're going to do a little bit to those spears over there before succumbing. But my opponent, fortunately, is starting to run a little low on ammo here. We are using Morgar to zone out some of these Illyrian Reavers. Of course, the Illyrian Reavers cannot do very much to him. And my Sons of Gorz have returned on a very miserable HP pool. So we are kind of reforming ranks, trying to sort of prepare for the second fight of the game, essentially. The balance of power definitely a little bit in my favor, because my opponent did sort of throw his Noble away, and not all of my troops there were wiped out. We actually still have a solid amount of models on the Korrax Man Rippers, just about a third of our HP. But we are now going to start closing the gap, and my opponent does have those 2 Swordmasters, who of course could be very potent. With those Lothran Seaguard, if they're able to chip away at the units that I need here to do the damage here, they could definitely do some work. And you can see the Sons of Gorz here losing another model, actually, and quite a couple hundred HPs, or 2 models, actually. And in comes the rear charge coming in against the Ungor Raiders, and the Illyrian Reavers are just going to devastate these guys. They're going to be really potent. We do pivot our chariots around, trying to beat them down, but really, that's not going to do much. And I figured, you know what, who cares? They're going to run out of ammo eventually. We'll get the Sons of Gorz here to bog down L'Ariel, and we're going to push into the front. So, immediately you can see we're kind of swamping the Spearmen. We've got these spears flanking around, just looking to bog down these Swordmasters. And in come the chariots, and you're going to see just how fast they're going to start raking in those kills. You can see this Bray Shaman of Shadows up to 4 kills, 5. This one up to 3. Just slaughtering their way through here. We are going to get our Chaos Spawn summoned, which is going to allow us to apply pressure to the back line here. Definitely overwhelming this point, but we're just 9 kills already on these chariots. 9 kills apiece, 20 between them. Just destroying these troops. And you can see, compared to Morgar here, if we can get a beat on Morgar, Morgar's only got 6 kills because his splash is much less directed. He doesn't have AP. He's not dishing out that much hurt. Whereas the chariots up to 12 and 13, they're just scything their way through these Signs of Mathlon, who really need to be holding the line here, and they're not able to. In the meantime, over here, the Butchers of Kalkengard are going to dive into the back of the Swordmasters who have decided to flank the Gore Herd. And the Illyrian Reavers, although they'll definitely be able to do some good damage here, because we don't have our shields up, we're still going to be able to sort of endure with our regen, and that's the most important part. In the meantime, the Shamans are going to break off over here. You can see the Lothran Seaguard here trending rather effectively with the Chaos Spawn, all things considered. But we are going to get the Ungor Raiders following up, and Morgar is going to swing towards this Lothran Seaguard. So we're sort of slowly but surely zoning my opponent out. These Lothran Seaguard over here definitely winning out. Or not the Lothran Seaguard, but the Swordmaster Poet, you're definitely winning out against some more spears. That wasn't much of a contest. Now they're going to start collapsing these Gore Herd, but not before these spears collapse. And then, of course, the Minotaurs can pivot in and help. Elsewhere, in the meantime, you can see Enfeebling Foe does go down to these Swordmasters of Hoeth, who are having a horrible time against the Butchers. And the Chariot, of course, still raking kills up to 48 and 34, just running these guys down and just destroying the High Elf forces. And at this point, my opponent is simply going to decide to GG out, giving the Beastmen a Pyrrhic victory. So certainly I didn't play great. I let my opponent get 2 monstrous banishments off. You can see 100 kills on Elariel. That is something that you should never allow to happen. But I did, and we definitely suffered for it. It was definitely a big issue, but we did come back, and my opponent definitely got a little greedy there. He definitely lost his Moondragon. Had I been a little smarter about my deployment, I could have easily gotten that Moondragon dead for far less losses, and my opponent would have taken far more damage. He would have suffered far more there than he did already. So definitely some good stuff for me. Otherwise, as far as this build goes, it's an interesting team. I'm not the biggest fan of Swordmasters in this matchup. I generally think you're better off just bringing more cavalry. Like 2 units of Dragon Princes would probably do you a better job. Also, Elariel needs to have, I think, it's worth bringing the Shieldstone of Isha. It's worth bringing the Star of Averlorn. That could have been a huge game changer there, especially in the end game. Maybe not a game changer, but it could have definitely been a huge boon to those Swordmasters who were getting beaten down. Between a Phos Protection and a Shield and a Star of Averlorn, they could have definitely been healed up a whole bunch. As for my build, definitely not terrible. It's kind of a fun experimental build. I'm not sure it's the way to go necessarily against high elves, but you definitely have some tools to zone out annoying skirmish cav. You've got some tools to shut down flyers. You've got your 2 casters, and the casters can do a lot of damage. They racked up about 90 kills between them in a rather short amount of time. The match didn't last that long. My opponent GG'd out. So the casters did pretty well in just that short space of time, and you can compare their performance to Morgr, who was in combat for essentially the exact same amount of time. And you can see just how well they did. But regardless, getting into my opponent, Couscous 2000 here, and we're going to hop on over to a second match, perhaps just as ridiculous as this one, and see how the Chariots do over there. So this time around, we are on the Black Forest. This time around, playing as Norsca, but once again against the Elves, or more realistically against Averlorn. Norsca is in fact a rather comparable, I think, faction to Beastmen in many ways. They've got a sort of somewhat elite infantry with their Marauder champions, much like Bestigors are kind of an elite infantry. They've got some heavy infantry with their Fimir warriors. They don't really have a real cavalry. They've got some skirmish cav, once again in limited capacity. Their infantry's okay. Their lords. The main difference really, I think, comes down to like which monsters they've got available, and the fact that Norsca's definitely a bit slower and more plotting, but they're certainly not on the level of, say, Chaos. And so what I decided to do here is go once again for a bit of chariot play. I've been finding chariots are just such a good tool against high elf infantry. Because the thing is, you often, because you're worried about elite high elf infantry, what you do is you end up overcommitting or committing very heavily to units with great weapons or units that are designed to kill that heavy infantry, but at the expense of dealing with their cavalry and with their monsters. So for example, Bestigors or Marauder champions with great weapons, units like that, you'll invest in those very heavily, and you're then left without really the tools to deal with cav. So what we do here is we did bring just essentially Wulfric and the Shaman Sorcerer here are our tools to crack that rear line. So Wulfric coming in with the boat, he doesn't have the Sword of Torgald, and not worth it if you're going with one of the AP mounts. So if you're going with a chariot or with a mammoth, don't bother. The Sword of Torgald only affects your non-AP damage, and he just doesn't have that much on a chariot. Hunter of Champions, of course, because the debuff is still great, even if Wulfric on a chariot probably isn't going to be killing any champions. Fight or Die, of course, for the buff, Seafang, and Foeseeker. Alongside him, a Shaman Sorcerer of Death with Spirit Leech, Soul Blight, Scroll of Protection, as well as Life Leeching. One of the things I do not like about the Shaman Sorcerers is that they do not have access to Arcane Conduit, but you know, you got to make do with what you got, and you still do get a nice AP Chariot, which is pretty slick. For the front line here, it is 4 units, or 3 units of Marauder. Oh, I was wrong, actually. Never mind. Just 2 units of Marauder Champions. I thought it was 3, but just 2 units of Marauder Champions backed up by 2 Fimir Warriors with great weapons, so as sort of bunker anti-large component here, and then 2 Marauder Spears on either side. Then, for a bit of a poke contingent, we've actually gone pretty heavy on the poke. We've got 2 Marauder Horsemasters on one end, then Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes, as well as 1 more unit of Marauder Horsemasters over on the other. My opponent here did go with a bit of a mixed bag with this formation. It almost looks like a random build, but I'm fairly sure it's not. Obviously the Lord here is Elariel because it is of course the forces of Averlorn, so there isn't much to say there. Interestingly enough, my opponent did decide to go with the Tempest, which I don't think is worth it against Norsca. Norsca doesn't have much in the way of flyers. You don't really need it. Star of Averlorn, Arcane Conduit, Earthblood, Banishment, Phos Protection, Shieldstone, so the full works on Elariel here. And then basically just a very interesting army. Swordmaster of Hoth on one end, backed up by Treekin, so an interesting sort of stacking combo, and potentially a very potent one, because the Treekin can tank a lot of the damage, while the Swordmasters just melt through anything that Norsca can bring as far as infantry is concerned. Some white lines of Krace are sort of anchoring things in the middle, and then there's Dryads here to provide some additional support. A mixed bag of shooting. You've got 2 Lothran Seaguard as well as the Sisters of Averlorn, so some stuff to suppress light, cheaper cavalry and things such as javelins, while the Sisters, of course, can deal with the heavily armored troops such as Fimir warriors with great weapons, perhaps the chariots a little bit, and that sort of stuff. Finally, in the very back, we do have some Dragon Princes, as well as some unshielded Silver Helms, who, of course, will do relatively well if they're able to get some meaty rear charges. Even against, say, Marauder Spearmen, they'll be able to pile through them pretty efficiently. But, of course, we are simply going to charge. You can see Wulfric over here does get a Sea Fang down, which does almost nothing. It's actually pretty pitiful. But he is going to dive into the Sisters of Averlorn here, and immediately we're going to start picking off a few models. So you can see they're already down about 7 models since we made contact. They lost 1 to the boat. And just so much damage is going down here between Wulfric and the Shaman, and this is once again where chariots really are shining. And even as that's happening, everywhere else the situation is falling apart. Here my opponent's able to anchor a little bit because he does have the Swordmasters in there, but the Marauder Champions, the Spears, and the Fimir are just anchoring the line here, even as these Horsemasters are pouring into the flank and these Spears are pushing up to zone out Cav. Elsewhere, my opponent is trying to shut down the Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes, and Alariel's doing her very best to try to chase down Wulfric and the Shaman Sorcerer. But we're simply going to drop a Hunter of Champions on her to make it hard for her to chase us, and continuously reposition and harass and just make ourselves a nuisance. Bunker busting these Lothran Seaguard, really smacking them down, and in the meantime you can see Wulfric is just able to bypass poor Alariel here and just running amok. We hit these Dragon Princes with a Spear Leech, and you can see there we did take off 7 models on them. Which, it wasn't overcast to get the extra range, but even if it wasn't, it's for 8 Winds of Magic, you take off 7 models on Dragon Princes that Alariel can't heal, and that is a huge win. Anytime, of course, my opponent is going to push through here, diving into the melee against the Marauder Spears, but they'll just bog him down. And Wulfric and company, him and his friend, they don't have to care. They're just going to push away, and they'll go somewhere else. They'll go fight somewhere else. These Marauder Spears just swamping the backline. It's just everything's being compromised. The Swordmasters are falling apart. Archery mob, or the Javelin mob, they're just doing so much damage. I actually pushed Wulfric here in against the Silver Helms before GG is called, and my opponent is forced to bow out. So a bit of a ridiculous build from Norsca, very skirmish heavy, very chariot heavy play. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I found it to be rather useful. The thing is, so if you decide to try to build Wulfric to be a bit of a Lord Sniper or a duelist in this situation, he's basically not really, I think, going to be that useful. If your opponent goes with Nobles, they're probably going to bring Techless. They can hit you with an enfeebling foe, and the Nobles are going to beat Wulfric down. If your opponent goes with Tyrion, well, Tyrion's not likely in the first place, but even if he does show up, you're not going to get that much damage output against Tyrion. Like, Tyrion's got such monstrous melee stats, and he's got Feint and Riposte. He's going to be able to tank through you. Plus, he's got Heart of Averlorn, probably got a healer healing him. Wulfric's not really going to be able to win the duel, in my opinion, and because your opponent is either just going to deny you the duel and run away from you continuously. In the case of Alariel, you're never going to catch her if she's on an eagle, or your opponent is going, or you're not likely to catch her if she's on an eagle, or your opponent's going to have other tools to snag you and prevent you from chasing them on a horse. So why bother? Might as well go on a chariot. And Wulfric, you can see 50 kills, 38 on the Sorcerer here. Spirit Leech, of course, doing a very good job against Dragon Princes a little bit. The rest of the build, doing reasonably well. Had my opponent had some Valyrian Reavers, we did have the Horsemasters to sort of zone them out. We had the Spears to provide a bit of a buffer. We had the Marauder Champions. The Fimir Warriors with great weapons providing some great bunker busting services. And all in all, just a very solid performance there. For my opponent, I do think it's a bit of a mixed bag build, and I wouldn't really recommend going with this mixed bag. I think Phoenix Guard are a good choice in this matchup. Despite the fact that their physical resistance gets bypassed, they can hold up relatively well against most Norscan troops. I also think you're well off to bring either Leader Nevers or more cavalry. I definitely don't think you really want to be bringing this much infantry. Alariel, of course, very competitive, very solid. So definitely good game to Mitch over here, and I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it entertaining. Hope you found it fun. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below if you have not already, to keep up with additional updates like this. If you have any comments, any criticism, as usual, do not hesitate to post them, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.